All right, what's going on, boys and girls? I am here with a fine gentleman, a great gamer, great YouTuber, but I'm going to let him introduce himself because I'm just terrible at that kind of stuff. So introduce yourself and let the fine people know who exactly you are.
Hi, I'm DreamcastGuy. I do all sorts of different reviews, basically anything I can get my hands on. I cover Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and PS4. I don't have any console bias. And I do lots of different rants. Basically, if it's something in the news that I think is really interesting and worth digging into, there's a good chance I've probably talked about it. And I'm very interested to be on this podcast today, just to kind of dig into YouTube, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. I very much appreciate you being on. I know you're a busy guy, and you recently just passed a certain milestone that a lot of YouTubers are looking for. That 100,000 with that magic old silver play button.
Yeah, I actually haven't even had the thing yet. There's supposed to be a thing that apparently will appear on my dashboard where I tell them, okay, mail it to me. I haven't even had that yet. So at some point in the next 3 months, I'll get it. I'm excited though.
And you definitely should be. I mean, 100K is nothing to sneeze at. That is definitely a big accomplishment. And, you know, they usually say that it's the most organic growth after the 100K. So congrats on that.
It's going to be great. I'm definitely going to put that big play button in my background so I can constantly be like, that's the thing that says that I'm a real YouTuber now.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty right off the bat. There's a lot of people that want to know, is getting into YouTube simply just a drop everything and just do it kind of thing? Is it a gradual transition? Is it, you know, something that you just kind of make up your mind and say, this is what I'm going to do? Is it an all or nothing kind of thing? Or is it a gradual transition, do you think, from your own experience?
That's what I personally did, is that I was managing a bookstore by day. It was about 50 hours a week. There, shelving books, dealing with lazy employees, yelling at them to take out the trash, like that kind of stuff. And then on my lunch breaks, I was literally writing scripts, taking notes, jotting down ideas. And then at night, I spent every single night working on Top 10 Thursdays, trying to come up with ideas, trying to constantly just create. And, over the course of the first year of really going into it, I started having videos get some views. I got my first paycheck, and I bought a microphone and started to expand. And then I always treated YouTube as my job, though. I feel like that's the biggest thing I always tell people is tell people you are a YouTuber. Have a day job. Treat your day job seriously. Don't call in sick to try and hit a deadline, but start to treat YouTube like your real job. And that's what I did, is just basically every day I'd be at the bookstore, throwing out suggestions, trying to improve their profit, doing everything I could for the business. But then at night, every single night, no matter how exhausted I was, how furious I was at something, I'd sit down and I'd work on something, some part of a video, or try and email somebody for the next review code. I just hack away at it. And somehow, over the course of months and years, it did just slowly grow until the end of 2016. I managed to leave my day job and just be a YouTuber.
So essentially what you're saying is that basically you have to treat YouTube like another job. So you're going to be working two jobs essentially that people are just going to have to do. You're going to have to put in the grind.
Yeah. It sucks to put it that way, but I think that's what you got to do. I mean, I was working about 90 hours a week there for a while because I was doing 40 hours on YouTube and then 50 hours at the bookstore. And, man, if you watch some of those videos when I was at the bookstore, I used to have some of my coworkers who watch my videos and I would look like a zombie. I'd be like, what's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here doing another episode of Top 10 Thursday. And people could tell I hadn't slept in 3 days. But the content was out there and it was getting views and it was getting subscribers. So I was building that raft to jump onto, you know?
So you do bring up a good point. You mentioned the first paycheck that you got from your videos. Now, what would you recommend? You know, are you talking, taking money from your normal job and inputting it into YouTube? Or are you just talking about taking the money you get from YouTube and reinvesting into, say, better audio equipment, video equipment, etc.? What would your recommendation be for new guys getting just started?
I think constantly be trying to reinvest. The money you're spending on your channel, as long as it's made from your channel, that's always going to be money well spent. I will say that I am unique in that I have never spent $1 of the bookstore money on YouTube stuff. I from the very beginning, actually, for my first 3,000 subscribers, I would actually talk into my microphone on this cell phone, what I would do is I'd literally set it like this on the edge of my desk, and I would write my script on the monitor or on a napkin, actually, a lot of times. So I'd read my napkin script, and then once I had that, I'd take the audio file from this, put it on my computer, and then edit it in Sony Vegas. And so that was just my method of like basically creating it. And for 3,000 subscribers, the microphone in your cell phone is actually pretty decent. So yeah, you're not going to sound as good as Markiplier's warm, soothing voice, but it's enough that people can understand you. And if you are saying something unique, they are going to subscribe. And so I did that until it was like 5 months of saving up, because YouTube only mails you a check when you start getting at least $100 a month. So it's like five months of the $20 rolling over until it got me a $100 check and I bought the mic.
I definitely think it's helpful for people to understand that you don't actually have to go out and buy like these kind of mics, you know, these stupid expensive, you know, you can talk about your Sennheisers or your, Blue Yetis or the Marantz or any of these high-end things. Like, the barrier to entry is so low that you can just use a cell phone and that the recordings will be fairly decent. That's how good cell phone mics have gotten. And it's really good to hear that the barrier to entry is quite that low.
And they're also, so I think I have it somewhere on my desk. I also have one of those, like, there's like $30 lapel mics that actually plug into your cell phone as well. I've used that a couple times where I knew I was going to be at a convention with one of my buddies who's like a big YouTuber like Spawnwave. And so since I knew I was going to be there, and I was like, okay, this is a rare opportunity where I could be face to face with somebody else who's like a really giant YouTuber I respect. I'm going to get this little $30 microphone that I could literally coil around 2 fingers. That way, when I get there, I have some way of recording. Like, I always say, go cheap and use it until it absolutely breaks. And if you used it enough that it actually just disintegrates, then buy the best thing you can. I had a horrible computer for editing that literally made us sound like a jet was taking off. And I used that thing to literally caught on fire. And then I bought a $1,000 editing computer. And that's just what I did, is like, I'm not going to replace something until it's broken. And then I've proven to myself, okay, I deserve this upgrade.
Yeah, definitely know what you mean, because it seems like nowadays we have this like throwaway mentality with things, as far as just like, I always need the latest and greatest, and sometimes the latest and greatest is not always practical or needed. So, you know, being frugal with your money is a really good thing when you're just getting started to get into YouTube. So the fact that, you know, someone like you who has literally said that use stuff until it breaks and then give yourself the best thing you can afford, that is some great advice, and not usually advice you hear very often, because usually it's the, oh, I need the new iMac or something like that.
Especially because I feel like a lot of people get so obsessed with buying like a $300 capture card and stuff. Like, well, I want to do like Let's Plays. I want to get like a $300 capture card so it can be 4K and 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second or 100 frames a second. And I feel like people kind of forget sometimes that like the biggest thing for YouTube is just start. Like, just start making videos, just start figuring it out, just start learning to edit. And like, if a paycheck comes in the mail, then reinvest that. Just keep doing it. I definitely say to people who are starting, if you do want it to become a business, just begin. Like, force yourself to start. Make 50 videos, make 100 videos. Like, don't worry too much about, is this processor properly integrating with my capture card? Just like, just make videos. Yeah.
So just getting started in YouTube seems to be the advice you're giving, but for some people, just getting started is the hardest thing. What would you say was your biggest obstacle you had to overcome in order to just get started on YouTube and get going? You know, like, what was your biggest fear, problem, the biggest hurdle you had in, you know, kind of getting started in what you thought was going to be the biggest problem for you to overcome?
I guess for me personally, I had a big fear of being on camera for a long time. Not because of how I look or anything like that, but I think I had a big fear that people only wanted to go to gaming channels for gameplay. I was actually even doing a couple times when I did like experimental newsy type stuff, I would talk over gameplay. Even then, I was so afraid of showing my face. I think for a long time, I didn't even introduce Top 10 Thursdays with my face. The first video that I was ever in, I think, was first one of my like really high production quality videos was Top 10 Hardest Achievements. And it's because one of the achievements I was talking about was Guitar Hero. So I actually had to appear in a video like playing Guitar Hero. And it was like the first time I'd been in a video in about 2 years. And I think once I kind of figured out, like, just by little bits of experimentation, like, people actually prefer me to be on camera. People prefer someone to sit down and be like, hey, man to man, let's talk about this weird topic. Like, that's definitely what people enjoy. It's not necessarily like, you don't always have to, if you start doing something a particular way, like in my case, being purely a gameplay channel, and doing like reviews and stuff, don't worry too much about trying to shift your style a little bit. As long as you don't randomly become like a makeup channel, people are probably going to stay with you on that ride. So that was a hard barrier for me to break down, though.
So it sounds like once you got over certain fears that you have to be willing to experiment and kind of put yourself out on a limb and just kind of go out there and try different things and see what sticks and what doesn't, what works for your audience. You know, what's your niche essentially, you know, what you're going to find that works best for you and your channel and the content you want to make. It seems to be at least what you're saying anyway, from my perspective. I definitely find that finding what works best for you and your audience is definitely something to keep in mind for new YouTubers. And I think it's definitely great advice that you're giving for them to be willing to try to experiment and don't stay stale, basically. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of just get into this rut of like doing certain things certain ways, and that's the only way they do, without trying to experiment and try to do different things to see what their audience, you know, might like, might not, and potentially grow your audience. And that's really what, you know, we want to do. You want to do as a YouTuber is really grow your audience. So I think that's great advice, and definitely something that newer YouTubers can take to heart.
Yeah. Just that's something I just learned from feedback. Like, I've done so much experimentation over the years, and I just experimented those outros for a long time. If you looked at like 2015 and like even early 2016, I would just end my videos with "keep dreaming," and the video just stops. But a couple times there, I just put a random extra message at the end, like, "Oh, I'm playing this game" or something, and the feedback was so overwhelmingly positive of, "Oh man, I love watching the end of a DreamcastGuy video. Like, I love that a video ends, but then it doesn't stop and he says something else." And it was like that weirdness of like, now it's almost an inside joke that there's something after the end of the video. Like, I don't know. It's simply, YouTube is such a cyclical thing. If you throw ideas out there, people tell you what's best, and then you run with it for a while, and then you throw it and they catch it and they tell you what they want next. So it's kind of about like very much about listening to your audience, you know?
So for you personally, what would you say is your biggest dislike about being a YouTuber and kind of putting yourself out there on YouTube now? I still don't like the hate. I don't like that. I get like 1.2 million views a month. You're going to get some hate. And I'll be honest, I feel like it's something people don't really understand until they're in front of it. But man, when the internet hates you, it sucks. Like, it sucks. You open your Twitter and it's death threats. You open your Facebook and it's death threats. You open your YouTube comment section and it's death threats. And normally the internet doesn't hate me, but occasionally, literally, I just step on the wrong beehive, to the point at which, I mean, I've had people at one point were so mad at me. I had people literally calling my house and saying they're going to cut my throat and stuff. That's the stuff that gets me the most, is when I make a video and it somehow bleeds into my real life and ruins my real life. That's the stuff that it still gets to me, because you can't prepare for it. Like, you cannot prepare your mind for, today I'm going to sit down and talk about video games, and end the day with, oh man, some guy named Thomas is saying that he wants to watch my eyes get peeled out as I suffocate. It's like, oh God, you know, that still gets to me. So for those new YouTubers who aren't quite sure how to deal with that kind of stuff, what would you say is the best way for you personally that you've found to kind of deal with the good, the bad, just the grind that it can be, because, you know, YouTube is a job, and just dealing with like the negativity and stuff that can accompany being that online personality that some people are looking to be, that other people want to make a full-time career. You know, what would your recommendation to overcome that negativity be?
Find your way to make stuff fun. Like, so the way I phrase it in my head, and this might sound weird out loud, but I call it forcing fun. And so at the end of every day, no matter how good of a day it's been, no matter how bad of a day it's been, no matter if I'm like 12 hours behind schedule on a big project, at the end of the day, I set down everything. I shut down all the capture cards. I put away this mic, and I literally just play video games for a couple hours, purely for fun. And if I'm actually feeling really down, I'll make it a point to pull in my friends or sometimes random fans. I've added a bunch of fans on Fortnite now, and I'll just pull them into random games and just get into talk to a stranger, team up for a bit, and just basically it feels like somebody is just pouring like cool water on your face after you've been walking through the desert. Like you need to get those nuggets of pure positivity to remember like, okay, gaming YouTube at this point is my job. I have to take this seriously. I pay taxes. I'm sitting in this office 60 hours a week, but it's also freaking awesome. Like this is so cool that I'm playing freaking video games for a paycheck. So I feel like you really got to like train yourself to step back and still just get to smell the flowers and go, okay, some jerk maybe sending me death threats, but that's literally half of a percent of this incredible freaking life, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like video games are supposed to be fun. And honestly, I've never understood that mentality where people are just that, like, I don't know, negative. I don't know what you would really call it. I would almost call it jealousy more than anything else. They are wishing they could do your job. And the thing is, they just view it as simply, oh, you're playing video games for a paycheck. And as you said, you know, you do have that aspect of your job, but you also mentioned that you're in that that office of yours for 60 hours a week, or, you know, working 16-hour days. Like I don't think they realize just how much work goes into it. And like, man, you know, like just like the editing process. Oh man, I can, you know, just doing what I do is tedious after a while. Just the amount of editing, I imagine, is a lot.
All that editing. I feel like if people knew how much I edited, that's the funniest thing is I feel like a part of being a YouTuber is learning to love editing, because that's the monster everybody wrestles with. Like every single one of my reviews, the fastest review I do usually takes about 35 hours, and about 10 of that is writing, recording, and editing. So it's one of those things where even if I beat a relatively short game, it's going to be a lot of hours of, how does this clip, does that crossfade make sense? Oh, let me try and get this combat scene instead. Oh, that particle effect actually looks a little bit too flashy. Can I purposely mute this color here so it won't like mess with viewers or make it want to click? Like people don't even recognize that though. That's like the background work they never know about. I've had people straight up say, do you just edit this gameplay together and then just talk over it in like one seamless thing? And I'm like, no, man, I wish I did. I wish I just dropped 10 minutes of raw gameplay onto a timeline and went, paycheck, please. Like, hell no.
And see, that's the thing that I find funny is that, you know, when you do video editing, people aren't going to notice some of the things that go into what a video editing does. They're not going to know where, like, you have to do certain cuts and certain things here, or how many times you hear the same voiceover every time you edit the same vertical slice of a clip over and over and over again. They will just never quite understand that grind. And then they're never going to understand some of the nuances that go into video editing, like where you make certain transitions and cuts and how you make certain things mix and match. And there's just certain stuff that they don't get, and it's sometimes kind of depressing. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I've had to do so much like that, and I feel like the things you end up being the proudest of are the things no one's gonna see. Like there's this when I was doing my Uncharted 4 review, I did this segue where I'm talking about like the duality of Nathan Drake's life, of him going from this like crazy life of crime to being a dad and possibly going back to the life of treasure hunting, life of crime. And so in the video, I have a clip of him running and throwing himself off this cliff at midnight to avoid all these guards, and he slams into water and the screen fades to black and you see these couple bubbles float up, and then it crossfades into him walking down some stairs in his house carrying a basket of laundry. And that's one of my proudest edit like cuts ever. No one's going to see that. No one's going to have any idea of like, what a perfect presentation to show this dual supposition of his existence. Like no one's going to like that. But that's the fun of it though. You got to learn to love that stuff.
And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't realize is you really have to learn to love video editing, and it is exhausting and it can be arduous at times.
Yeah, it's exhausting in a way that people will not understand. For hours. Yeah, for hours. Top 10 Thursday, it takes me about 12 hours to edit every week. And people would not even imagine of like, well, what is it like to spend 12 hours of every single week just editing a list video, something that people think you do in 30 minutes, you know?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I wish I could pump these out in 30 minutes. Man, that'd be great because, you know, some of these things take hours, like you said. And the biggest thing is just making sure that it's done the right way, and it's not easy, but you know, I'd be pumping out a whole lot more videos if it only took me a half an hour to video edit. So with that said, what is your recommended videos editing software?
I I prefer Sony Vegas when it comes to general editing. I think everybody else in the business uses Premiere. So I think if you're trying to I know a lot of YouTubers now, they don't publicly say it, but they're starting a private channel to get big enough to get a job at somewhere like GameStop or IGN, because that's a steady paycheck. You can go from like a 5,000 subscriber channel to like a steady job. Like, if you're trying to do that, if you're trying to get into the industry, I definitely say Premiere. Personally, though, I like Sony Vegas because the way it does layering is very nice and neat. I feel like it's very easy for me to put like, okay, this layer is just going to be all my title cards. I'll put that one there. I can put, here's my gameplay layer. I'm going to put my intro and outro here. And then I have my audio layers for the background music, my voiceover. And if I need to put any sound effects, I have a layer for that. I have my layer for watermarking. Like, it's so clean. It's so easy. Like, I'd say it took me about 10 hours to learn Sony Vegas to a very good level. And I mean that as a compliment to the program. I think in 10 hours, from knowing almost nothing about the program to being able to edit entire videos quite seamlessly using hotkeys, it only took about 10 hours to learn Sony Vegas. So for simplicity, I highly recommend it for that. Audio recording, I record all my audio through Audacity, the free program. It's very good just because it has lots of different settings in it for adding reverb or normalizing audio in case you're in some sort of household that has like somebody banging around in the background. You can actually neutralize that stuff. I capture all my video with an Elgato capture card. And when you get an Elgato capture card, the standard thing is just called Game Capture HD. It's a program that actually makes it where, so on my right here, I actually have here, I'll actually just turn this around and show you guys something for once. So here's like my monitor that has like all my, that's like where I have the gameplay. And then this monitor here is where like all the recording of the gameplay is. So basically I can have like, at any one time, I have both images going on, so I can see what's going on in my hard drive to edit later and what I'm currently doing at the same time, simultaneous type stuff. So all of that is just basically to make it where I can just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Like, beat a game, take some notes, record some audio. Now on this screen, I have all my editing programs. On this screen, I have all my folders full of all the raw video, and I can just combine them together into a final product.
Okay, so we've talked about software. We've talked a little bit about what else goes into the video editing aspect of stuff. But that's only one small part. That's only one portion of the job, not a small portion, but it's a portion of the job. What are some of the other things that go around into the job of being a YouTuber full time? Because I think there's stuff that some people aren't going to really understand that's involved with it.
Well, and the big thing about YouTuber is that people see these videos just appear. They don't realize that during the week, I'm actually doing a tiny bunch of small jobs simultaneously as well. So there's editing videos, but then there's also these side parts of it, like sometimes late at night when I'm really stressed about a project, I'll relax by just photoshopping all the thumbnails I need for the next 2 weeks worth of projects. So that's when I'm just worrying about fonts and sizing and how do I want to get this? And okay, I need to neutralize this background for this vectored image of a title card so I can put it where it'll say like, The Witcher 3 sucks. Okay, how can I match the font of Witcher 3 there? Okay, I want to have a picture of Geralt going like this. Can I find one that already exists? No. Okay, let's get that. Like, so there's that stuff, but then there's also sending emails to make sure I have the next project lined up. Do I have this review code? How's that going? Like, okay, there's that. Okay, now I have this. Let me schedule what my next reviews are even going to be, because I don't pull them out of a hat. I do a lot of research to find, okay, what will I find the most interesting to cover that is actually going to be something people want to watch? Because I can't just be like, hey guys, this is my 15th episode about why I love Final Fantasy VII. Like, that would definitely make me lose subs. So it's constantly like that. And then also the impromptu rant videos. So yeah, it's definitely the type of thing of like, YouTube becomes this giant machine and you spin the wheel and you can step away from it for a second, but you're always having to keep it spinning to do the other 15 things, you know?
But no, the one thing I love about your content, though, specifically in this, I mean, you kind of fanboying for a second. The biggest thing that I love about your content, though, is you're passionate about all the stuff that you do. You know, you enjoy it. You have fun with it. Like, you don't, even though it's a job and you're, doing videos consistently, it's not like something from some of the bigger game media sites where they come across very disingenuous and very boring, and they just like they don't care. And this is my job and this is what I do. Whereas you come across as, this is my job and I love it. And that I love about your content and YouTubers specifically, because a lot of them, there are some, but you specifically and your content for this interview are very genuine, very honest, and very frank. And that to me is awesome, as opposed to the big video game websites that, or conglomerates that most gamers would potentially know.
Yeah, or even when they're really into it, they end up being stuck into the machine very much so. Like, so I know a lot of people over at IGN now, and a lot of those dudes literally are like, okay, I'm a writer, which means I just write these scripts of, okay, I'm just a video editor. There's people who just edit video. There's all these gears that make it where they can churn out like 15 videos a day, but it definitely becomes this thing of like, okay, you're never going to get to leave that one spot in the company. Whereas when you're a solo YouTuber, you're every single part of the company, for better or worse. I personally love it though. I love that every video exists because I made it. Like, I'm never ever having to hand a project off.
Okay, now that I have you on, I mean, come on. I can't have the Dreamcast guy on and not talk about video games. I mean, that's just, there'd be like heresy. That'd be heresy. Just terrible of me not to do. So, for those that don't know, I've watched, your video about, who is the Dreamcast guy. But what's the TLDR version for those that, might not know who you are and how you came up with the Dreamcast guy as your YouTube name or YouTube handle?
Just the super abbreviated version. I'm just a guy who happened to get a Dreamcast at a rough time of my life and carried it with me for many, many years, and just always had this thing. So while I did like NES and Super Nintendo and the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, and I played all those a ton, Dreamcast was always the console I kept going back to, and it kind of became my namesake while I was on a journey to collect every Dreamcast game. It took about 13 years to get every single Dreamcast game, but along the way, I just kept literally running into people who would give me their Dreamcast collections, and I hunted so many different stores that I kind of became famous in all the retro gaming scene of Dallas as the Dreamcast guy. So when I went to YouTube, I was like, oh, that's my dumb name.
Well, being the Dreamcast guy, I do have to ask, and I'd be remiss not to ask, favorite Dreamcast game?
I feel like every time I answer that question, I say something different because there are so many good games. I feel like it's always going to be a tie probably between Grandia 2, Skies of Arcadia, and Shenmue, because I feel like all three of those are 10 out of 10 games. As of the last couple months, I've been leaning more towards Skies of Arcadia, though, just because that game is so phenomenal, and it actually uses specific things about the Dreamcast in a way that no other system has. Like the Dreamcast memory card actually has a tiny speaker on it, so when you go around, there would be these hidden items in the game, and your memory card would actually beep as a way of like signifying sonar to find like these little tiny gems that became a super weapon at the end of the game. Like that's actually how you unlocked one of the super weapons, was finding all these hidden items. And I don't know, I love the Dreamcast a lot, and I feel like that game had such great freaking graphics and music and voice acting, and it really kind of emphasized what that hardware could do.
I was going to say, yeah, for me, like, my favorite Dreamcast games are probably, Skies of Arcadia, the Shenmue, the typical, bigger games that most people know, but I also love, like, Silver and Star Lancer. Like, those are some of my favorite games on that system.
Silver is one of those games that I consider a real hidden gem. I got that for $2 at a GameStop. They had a huge bin in 2003 that said, like, all Dreamcast must go, and every game was $2. So I bought Silver that day, and I bought Slave Zero that day. And Silver cracks me up, man, because I know it's just probably a basic hack and slash, but I think the silly character voices just are so funny. Man, I love that game.
So out of all the videos and all the editing and everything that you've made on YouTube, what would you honestly say is your favorite thing or most proudest moment, proudest thing that you've done, etc., be it content-wise or editing or, any aspect of the job?
That's such a tough call. I am actually really, I feel like this might sound cheesy, but I'm genuinely happy with a lot of the stuff I've made. I think if I had to just point to a single one, and it's one that's, I feel like two of my favorites were I did a video last year that was kind of one of my first rant videos ever, and it was called Why Gaming YouTubers Quit. And it was about Angry Joe taking like his 4-month break. And I kind of really dove into like the psychosis and stress of this career path. And it had such an overwhelming reception, mostly positive, but I even found the negative quite interesting as well. There was this interesting pushback that created a really interesting discussion of people saying that this wasn't a job, and people actually kind of sympathetic with the unknown struggles of being a gaming YouTuber and kind of being chained to your desk, playing the good games and the bad, basically at gunpoint to get a paycheck. Like, it created such an interesting discussion. But my other one that I'm super proud of and always will be is my which Final Fantasy should you play first? That video was very psychologically taxing. I ended up making that in like one 15-hour sitting. I had one day off that week. It's funny that I can remember it's been like 3.5 years now, but I made that one 15-hour sitting. I wrote the script for the good and bad of Final Fantasies 1 through 10, recorded the whole thing in one like 2-hour breath. I literally pressed record, talked into the microphone for 2 hours, edited the whole thing together, and it became this like 28-minute presentation. And it still gets tons of views today. And it's just one of those things that I'm really proud of, because I feel like the best YouTube videos and the ones you end up being the most proud of are the ones that feel like you were the only person who could have created it. And I feel like I am just the one person who happened to have beaten all the Final Fantasies so many times over again, including all their different versions. I was the person who was supposed to write that script. It felt very je ne sais quoi. I felt like I was supposed to do that. And so I'm still so damn proud of that one.
So we've talked about YouTube, we talked about our favorite games. Now let's talk about something that's a little more depressing. What's the worst thing probably that's going on in the gaming industry, in your opinion?
I think that I feel like microtransactions have become reskinned. I feel like we started to see Season Pass was like this dragon that rose up 2 years ago, and we managed to slay that. And then we had microtransactions that were really trying to nickel and dime us. And those have always been pervasive in some format or another. But I feel like there's this new, more overt pay-to-win mechanics that are creeping into so many products of like, hey, you can unlock all these characters or pay $5 and you have them now. Or, oh, that next car is a little bit out of reach. Well, if you just type in your credit card today, you'll actually have the super sweet Ultra Beast car, you know? And I feel like that business model works. Like, that's the downside of this, is that it actually makes these people billions and billions of dollars. So while you and I actually openly fight against that and do not financially support it, there is an audience out there of 35-year-old gamers who have a wife, who have 2 kids, who are only able to game 7 hours a week, who want that fastest car and will pay that $2. So those people, unfortunately, are paying for this and paying for this and paying for this. So I feel like we're going to see that actually expand. That's probably what worries me the most, is just the idea of microtransactions and loot crates in general just becoming more and more pervasive, because it freaking works on a psychological level.
If there was something you could tell a brand new YouTuber about, you know, advice-wise, or even going back in time and telling yourself what you've learned since becoming a full-time YouTuber, what piece of advice would you give new users and potentially to yourself if you could go back and go back one more time?
I'll say 2 things that I feel like I wish I could have told myself many years ago, which is audio is more important than video. People want to hear something interesting more than they want to see something interesting. All the hours I spend editing probably help a little bit, but the reason people share videos is because you're saying something that nobody else has said. If you actually present a cogent, unique argument, people are going to spread that. It's going to get likes, it's going to get shares, and it's going to get more eyeballs on your content. I mean, literally my most viewed video is just a slideshow of images. It has 750,000 views, and it's literally a slideshow of still images of Pyramid Head, and it's my theory of where Pyramid Head came from. I literally wrote that script on a napkin in 45 minutes. Almost 1 million people have watched it now because I had good audio and I tried to say something nobody else was saying. And I will also say the other thing I wish I'd figured out years ago is people are addicted to schedules. People want to not just enjoy your content, they want to look forward to your content. We are now in the age of hype culture. Part of the reason that Top 10 Thursday gets so many views month after month is the fact that it's called Top 10 Thursday. It's not just, hey, did you like this episode? Well, you better subscribe because coming up is just more of what you just enjoyed. I feel like people want to look forward to content, and that's what also gets them hooked in. So I make it a point to always release my reviews at about 10 a.m. my time on Tuesdays. Even if I'm allowed to put it up at midnight of Monday, I usually put it up at Tuesday morning, because I want the people who are waking up right then, who are going to be thinking, is there a Dreamcast Guy review this week? I want to give them something that'll get back into their habit of sticking with my content. So schedules and audio are, in my opinion, are like the two pillars to success right now on YouTube.
So, and with that, I think all my questions about being a gaming YouTuber have pretty much been answered, and there's been some great advice in this particular interview from the Dreamcast Guy, and I want to say thank you very much for him for joining me. This was an awesome opportunity, and I want to thank him again for it. He is a great YouTuber. He's a great guy. He's a down with the community, and that is awesome, and he is so awesome. I got nothing bad to say about him whatsoever. Make sure you subscribe to his channel on YouTube. Great guy, great content, definitely different opinions, loves what he does, and that is something I think we need more of in YouTube gaming scene. So this closes out this interview. Thank you. You guys know what to do. Rate it, subscribe, and peace out.